There are 3 key parts to strategy. It's very, very simple. And 2 of them we're not too bad at. So the first bit is your why. And this is where you find jargon like vision, mission, and purpose, right? So this is where we're thinking long term and where we're being aspirational. I can't remember who it was that was bemoaning the lack of aspiration in their strategic plans, but this is where you would expect to find it. This is the why. It's answering questions like, what is the change that we're trying to make in the world? Why do we exist? And this one, the importance of the aspiration is that it's not something that we can just achieve in a year or 3 years. It's bigger than that. And that means that this shouldn't change very often. So our why, sometimes we have to find it. The reason Simon Sinek talks about finding your why isn't because you have to make it up. It's because you have to find it and agree on it together, right? So you generally know what it is, you just have to make it explicit. So this one shouldn't change very often. Now the bottom layer, this is the bit we're quite good at too. The bottom layer is the what, right? And so your what is your short term. And this is where you'll find words like project, program, initiative, action plan, budget, right? This is the stuff that we are doing on a day-to-day basis, and this one should change all the time, right? This one should be changing every day because the world around us is, and so the way we respond to it should be as well. And the bit in the middle, this is the guts of strategy. This is the guts of your strategic plan. And this is the bit that we find really, really hard. And this is the how. And this is medium term. And it's intentional, right? And so this is where you should find jargon like strategy, objective, intention, priority. And this one should change sometimes. So we change our how either because we've had an external shock, so something massive has happened in our operating environment, like, I don't know, pandemic, and so we need to think about actually what we're about and how we're going to achieve our goals, or on a regular basis, right? So depending on the size of your organisation and the complexity of what you're doing, that might be once a year or it might be once every 3 years. Although I would say that the way things are at the moment, if you only have to update your strategic plan once every 3 years, you're probably doing it wrong, or your business is very, very simple, right? And so this is where we spend most of our energy when it comes to a strategic plan, is on how we're going to do it. And I think, as you've all alluded to in the chat, what's really hard is that we tend to do a bit up here, YY, aspirational, connected community, sustainable environment, and then we put most of our energy down here, because that's where we're most comfortable. So we try and skip straight to the planning and the operations and the nuts and bolts. Now the problem with doing that is that this is relevant for about as long as the ink is wet on your page. And as soon as you walk out of the meeting room, something has changed which makes this irrelevant now. And when you haven't spent enough time here in the how, you don't have the decision rules and principles you need to respond to things while they keep changing, right? So what we want when we come out of a strategic plan is some real clarity about how we're going to get there, which means what are we going to focus on? What comes first? How are we going to respond when things go wrong or when we see a new opportunity? How will we spend our money and allocate our time, energy and resources, right? And when we don't have good rules here, because we didn't take the time in our strategic planning process to do that, as soon as the what changes, it's no good anymore. So when we do a good job of the how, which is your connecty piece, what should be happening is that your what on a daily basis is proving your why. You should be able to look at what you're doing and go, that makes sense. We're trying to get closer to here. But we can't do that unless we've done a really good job of the connecting piece. Does that make sense? Do you feel like you now have a strategy MBA? Because you should. Like everybody on this call, however many of you there are, now knows more about strategy than about 80% of senior executives. So well done. 15 minutes in and you've already basically got an MBA. I love it.